All right, I think we can start. Thank you for attending this session. I have to tell you, I'm surprised there are so many people in the room. So at 5 p.m., a tough topic like talking about timesheet and task update. You know, I'm proud of you guys. Okay. Hey. All right, so what are we going to talk about during this session? The main objective is to try to demystify the timesheet and task update in Project Server 2010. And basically to share with you a lot of lessons learned through engagement with customers and escalation for some of them. And basically to prepare you to understand better what's going on, what is the timesheet engine and the task update, what is happening once you submit your timesheet or your users submit their timesheet or their task update, and what to do if something goes wrong, if some updates never come up of the system. So we will see also how to diagnose that or to run some reports where the data is stored, and how to understand what is happening, and hopefully fix the problems around timesheet and task updates. There is another session objective because I leveraged a lot of white paper that was published in January on TechNet. That's called Best Practices to Input Actual and Report Actual into your Project Server 2010. So it's a very good white paper because there are a lot of recommendations. What are the best configuration scenario that you can use for your system to prevent all kind of problems. And we are going to go over these recommendations in this session as well, and to go into some details for each of the recommendations. So hopefully what you take away from this session is a better understanding of the processes around the timesheet and task update in Project Server 2010, to know what are the best configuration settings that Microsoft recommends, and there are lots of detail into the white paper I was mentioning. And also, hopefully not to lose any other updates, any update in your system. So just a quick poll, like who is on 2010 today? All right, anybody on 2007? Still? Okay. All right, so that's the agenda. I wanted to go over the challenges of the timesheet and task updates, the various scenario and configuration of the tool itself. So you are most likely familiar with that, but just as a reminder of what the solution can do in terms of configuring and using the system to capture task updates and to make them flow through the system to update the plans, as well as the timesheet. The next thing I wanted to cover is about these recommended practices to input actual. So I leverage a lot of the content that is in this white paper I was mentioning. And then the interesting part will be to look under the hood. What's going on there? So what's happening once you use PWA and you submit your updates? Where is it going? What's happening? What processing? And what can go wrong? And I will cover some tools of the trade. So what do you have out of the box? And what do you have outside the box that I will provide some examples. And I will actually publish in a blog, I'm not sure which one yet, but the script that I'm going to talk about. So you will be able to use that. These are just read-only scripts that basically read a lot of data in the database and make sense of them and present them in a way that you can act on them. And I will reserve some time for Q&A at the end. All right, so who am I? My name is Jean-François Le Saux, or JF Le Saux. I'm based in New Jersey, as you can tell by my accent, I would say. That's the east part of New Jersey, specifically. And I'm an architect, so I'm part of MCS, so I'm involved in delivery of EPM solution, but also scoping engagement, discussing with customers solutions that involve all kind of complex situation with integration, with line of business application, with other tools, various things that we can do with project server, EPM, and how to extend the solution and so forth. But my role is mainly about delivery architecture, so I'm not a salesperson. And why this session? And I think I had the idea of this session basically because I spent few painful weeks in Canada with an unlucky customer using a lot the timesheet and the task updates and having a lot of problems. And we created a lot of tools to troubleshoot this with Premiere. And I had the idea that why not to talk about this, because this is not that complex, but it's not documented. So that's a good opportunity to talk about it, what's going on. So yeah, to go back to the previous slide, I'm sure you will be like that at the end of the session, or I hope at least. All right, what are the challenges? Everybody looks at the solution the first time, and you have all these features and all these configuration settings that you can do, and each configuration page has a lot of options. And it's a big challenge to basically choose the right option, or to know exactly, am I choosing the right option or what? What's going to happen if I click on this button, or I check this box, or whatever. So that was about how should I configure my EPM solution, and I think you have all been through that. Another thing is where and how should I input my updates? So should I use the project plan directly in Project Professional? Should I use the PWA screen, timesheet, task updates? What mode should I use? Should I enter my updates first in task view, timesheet view, then import, cross-import, and so forth? Or use the new mode that is in 2010, that's called a single entry mode, that kind of automates the process as long as you want to input or you accept to input your updates in the timesheet. Now, another thing I wanted, and that's one of the challenges, I've done everything right? Where are my updates? So a lot of users, we find out that customers where there are problems with timesheet and task updates are saying, yeah, where are my updates? So I'm a team member, I submitted everything, and well, my approver didn't receive anything. They don't show up on the PWA approval page, for example. What's happening? Or they were approved, but they don't show up in the plan or in PWA. What happened? Where is the data? And where can I troubleshoot and find out what happened to my data? Because what is the most frustrating thing probably is not to know what happened. Another thing is, I found my updates. Okay, I finally run a bunch of queries and I found them, but they are stuck. Why are they stuck there? And they didn't flow through the process into the reporting database and the cubes. And another question, typically, who is not reporting their updates? So who is on vacation? How can I identify this? The tool, the solution by itself is not very useful at telling you, well, your data is incomplete. And you have so many people who have not reported. Yes?
What about my updates change themselves?
Yes, that's another one, absolutely. I could have put that, yes. Yeah, the system changed my update. What the, huh? Yes, also, yeah. The system took a number I never reported. Yes, yeah, that has happened too. That's true. Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah. So is the system ready for reporting at the end of the month? That's another big question there. Like, okay, great. Everybody is supposed to have followed the process, entered their time, approved everything. How do I know if what I'm looking at in the reporting database is really complete or not for a given time period? How can I know that? The system is not telling you that, for sure. All right, so a very quick review of the scenario for the timesheet and task updates. Okay, this is what the product offers. So you have three scenarios. The main three scenarios are, you have the task view, right? So you enter the progress, basically a report on your assignments as an end user. And then you will have your project manager approving the task updates, hopefully approving them or rejecting them, doing something with them at least. And then applying the updates to the project plan, saving the project plan, publishing the project plan before anyone can see them in PWA, and before can see them also in the reporting database, because the action of publishing is the one that pushes everything to reporting. Saving only is not going to do anything to the reporting database. Second mode is the timesheet view. So why these two different views? It's because you have two different types of data that are entered. So in a previous version of the system, 2007, we had actually two different screens that were not linked in any way with each other and that required a double entry if you were using both timesheet and task update, right? So in the timesheet, you basically enter timesheet, your time, against tasks or against non-project tasks as well, non-project activities. So that allows you to track all kinds of things that are not related to project plans, like sick time, vacation, project conference, and all kinds of things like that. So you have also an approval process there for the timesheet that may be different from the task update. So typically, and that's the scenario, the task updates are really targeted for the progress of the tasks, the assignments for the project manager. The timesheet, depending on your organization, is really targeted toward probably integrating with some kind of financial system, because you report your time, the number of hours spent on specific activities every day, for example, and this has no impact on the task in the plan, the project plan. So it may be approved and reviewed by someone that has nothing to do with the project management. And you have an ability to track also time against non-project activities like admin, personal task, whatever. And the single entry mode is the one that combines both. So this is new for 2010, and this is a setting that allows you to have all the information entered on one screen only, with two parts, but one screen. So you don't have to switch page to enter data in the timesheet and the task update. You have no import required, so this is important, because if you do not use single entry mode, you will have to actually import the time if you decide to use both timesheet and task to avoid double entry and to avoid errors, for example. Single entry mode automates this process. And it follows, anyway, the approval process, depending on who is the approver for the timesheet part, who is the approver for the task updates, and pushes all the updates to the plan, to the project manager. And then the same process happens. The project manager has to open the plan or review the updates, approve or reject them, do something with them, applies the updates to the project plan, save, publish, to be able to push the data to the reporting database and the published database so that people can see them in PWA. All right, so this is how it's supposed to work. So a very brief workflow so that I talk about that, the single entry mode. All right, so you start, you enter everything into the timesheet view, and then you press save. So everything, when I say everything, you have two parts in the screen. One part that is really the timesheet, another part that is related to the progress of your task, your assignment in the project plan. So depending on the settings you specify for the task settings, you may have to enter a person complete or a number of hours remaining, that type of things. But you have only one page you have to access to enter both type of information, hours spent and the progress. And then the system pushes all that through a number of tables and databases and to populate the approval page for the approvers who are in charge of doing their job. So they approve, they reject, and then they apply the changes, and everything is supposed to flow, right? Okay, where do you configure this? At least I put just one setting there, but it's basically in the server settings. You have a submenu, a menu that deals with timesheet settings, where you are going to specify all the settings specific to the timesheet entry. So, and one of these settings is to check this box that's called single entry mode. On top of this box, you have additional options that we are going to cover. But the page where you enter on the timesheet is going to show you this type of display, where you will have on the right part your timesheet based on the time period you have decided to use. So, and you will enter your unit of of update. So in this case, it's hours there. You could have different things. And you will have tasks that are assignments, as well as non-project time at the bottom that are grayed out, that could be automatically approved or not. Okay? And that's part of the normal settings for the timesheet. All right, so the next one is, and it's going to be very similar between timesheet view and task view, because the two are closely related if you use both of them. So if you decide to enter the timesheet first, that is the bottom part of the screen there with the workflow. So you will start with your timesheet. You will enter your hours for the day, and then you will save and submit your timesheet update to your timesheet approver, who may be different from the project manager, who is really the one in charge of the project. And on the other side, the task view, you may decide to import the hours that were entered in the timesheet so that you don't have to retype them with the risk of errors that you have. And then you will do the same thing. Basically, you will save, submit, and then the records and the updates will go to the project manager or the timesheet manager for the timesheet to be approved and to be saved in the project for the project manager and so forth. So what's important to know is that these two set of data, timesheet or task update, actually are stored in two different set of tables in the database. And they are stored in the published database because everything that's going on with PWA, as you know, reads the data from the published database. So they are stored there in some of tables that are hidden because they are not documented, by the way. So we don't want you to go into this published database or draft database because we don't document it. So how do you configure the timesheet view? So this one, as you can see, has a lot more options there. I'm not going to go over all that, but you have all kinds of options to specify how do you want the grid to look like, what do you want the users to enter, to look at the value, what are some maximum number of hours per timesheet you could have, and so forth. You can set some rules in there to be applied to the timesheet, so your users cannot enter things that don't make sense. And you have all kinds of options to allow future time reporting and allow your users to enter personal tasks. That's another option. And to allow top-level time reporting, and you have a bunch of other options there. Yes?
Can you go back to that previous?
Sure.
So the 999 on the maximum hours per timesheet, if you're allowing just 8 hours a day, where are you allowed to put over 40 hours a week? In the overtime only?
This is the maximum number I think you can put. So frequently, and I believe it's a default probably, we don't put a limit there. That means we leave that open.
But you're saying 8 hours a day, so I know you'll get a message that'll come up if you try to put more than 8 hours in a day.
Right, in this case, yeah, the standard timesheet day is 8 hours.
So the 999 is irrelevant?
The 999 is the limit you cannot exceed.
You won't. Yeah, you won't, you never will.
Right, yes.
We just set it, we just take the 7 days a week and multiply it by 24.
But what about overtime?
Overtime will be captured in a different place where you will have these categories, yes?
So if I leave that at 8 hours a day, and he reports 8 hours in regular time, can I put 4 hours in overtime? Or will it probably won't let me do that because I'm only saying 8 hours a day here?
No, this... The limit...
No, I know that. What I'm saying is I don't want people to put more than 8 hours a day.
Right.
All right? But I also want to know what they reported beyond 8 hours.
Yes.
Okay? So if I do it this way, I won't be able to report anything in the overtime.
No, as long as you specify that you allow the users to enter overtime, they will be able to enter additional time for overtime. You have different buckets for overtime versus regular time.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know if the overtime fell into this.
No. What you would do if you wanted to really limit the number of hours would be to use the hourly reporting limits there. Instead of 999 per day, you would put 12 or 16 or whatever. Or 24 or
yeah,
so.
I only want people to report 8 hours a day.
Right.
But
Yes,
If they work beyond 8 hours, I want to know about it.
yes.
And I guess the only way I would know about that is if they put it in OT.
Yes, or you would know when you approve, basically, as a timesheet approver, when you approve the time, you will see that showing up, what they are sending you as an update.
Okay.
If you want that to be automated, then I would imagine you need to have some kind of custom thing that is going to show you or pop up something that says you have more than so many hours there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
The maximum hours per day, the point that he's trying to make is, if you set it to 8, okay, it will not allow you to put overtime.
That's right.
Additional actuals.
That's true.
At the end of the day, if you put 8 and 2 overtime, that's 10 actuals.
Yes.
So it will not allow you to put.
Yeah, there's no way to tell.
Overtime.
Yeah, so really what I want to tell the system is, hey, I only want them to put maximum 8 hours regular time.
Uh-huh.
As far as overtime, I don't care, but there's no overtime rule here.
Right.
There's no setting, right? Am I
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes, you are right.
And, you know, that's why I thought the maximum hours per timesheet, maybe I could set that at a certain level, but no, that 8 hours per day is regardless. I cannot go beyond that. And
Here you would have maximum number of hours per day, right? At the bottom, the limits, where you could set the utmost maximum number of hours per day that the users can report. If they try to exceed that, the system will tell them, no, I can take
but
your
then
update.
what is the 8 giving me? If I put maximum, say I put 20 in maximum hours per day, right?
Yes.
And I leave it at 8 up above.
Yes.
It's still not going to let me go beyond 8, right? Or is that going to override the previous one? Yeah.
No, the 8 is the definition of hours per day.
Per day, that's what I'm saying.
It's
So
not a limit.
what if I put the maximum hours per day, I made that 20? What do you think the system's going to do when I try to put 10 hours in for a day?
This isn't
Let you do it.
I don't, I disagree.
process that you have. I mean, you have
you
to
try
have
it?
your processes and procedures in place.
Did you try it?
Just to support it.
Okay.
The limits are that intersection.
Okay. We got to test that.
All right. Let's table that, or yes.
Oh, that's 8 hours.
Okay.
All right, the task update. You have also, it's the same process, more or less. There is an integration between the timesheet and the task progress, where you can actually import your hours from one or the other. From the task update, in this case, if you start entering your time into the task view, and push it into the timesheet, so it will fill in your timesheet with the hours you entered in the task. That's the purpose of that. And then you can fill additional lines for everything that is not an assignment. So that's the process. So what are the configuration settings that you have there? So in the task update, you have the tracking methods that you have to specify. So you have basically 4 kinds, but 3 kinds, and then a free form that is, well, everybody can enter their own. But basically, you have hours of work done per period, you have actual work done, and work remaining, and % of work complete. You have also some reporting display where you can specify, okay, I want each week to start on a specific day, Sunday or Monday, and you also specify how you want your resources to input their hours. Is it on a daily basis or a weekly basis? And that's going to drive how many buckets you see on the grid in your task update. And then you have the protect user updates. So this one is going to drive basically what you allow the system to take as an input of the actual. So if you use, for example, the single entry mode, and you check this first box that says only allow task updates via task and timesheet, what this option means, even in a non-single entry mode, it means that you don't want the project manager to override what the resources are entering into the task view or the task timesheet view. So it's important because as a project manager, actually, if you don't protect these updates, you could have the project manager overriding what the end users are entering in their timesheet or the task view to put a value there. So by setting this option to only allow task update via the task and timesheet, you will prevent or you will protect the updates and prevent the project manager from overriding these updates in the project plan. Okay? And you have additional options to import all timesheet line classification or only the standard one if you don't check the box. And to allow some users to define custom periods for task updates and so forth. So all that is kind of it's part of the process that you are going to define and to use in your organization that will drive how you configure the task update view. All right? And you can also define how many future periods you want to see in the task update. So if you don't want the users to see 1,000 lines for all the assignments they have in their task update, it's probably wise to put a limit there to just fix the window of the time between different dates so that they will see only the assignments that fit within these dates. Okay? So you don't have too many things and you don't push the users to hide or delete or do all kinds of things to try to reduce the list of the task updates or the lines that are showing up in the task. Yes?
Those two other options that are the import all timesheet classification, the allow users. So
Yep.
with single entry mode, you probably don't need to check those off, right?
With single, no, yeah, you may want to, because single entry mode means you enter everything in the timesheet. So in the timesheet, you could have actually the standard line classification or all of them, even the one you have added as a custom line classifications. So that's what it is.
Oh, so import all timesheet classifications must be check marked with these single entry mode.
Right, that's what the document.
And then
yeah.
allow users to find custom periods for task updates.
Yes.
But you probably wouldn't be doing task updates in a single entry mode, right? Because you're just entering via the time card?
No, the single entry mode does task updates, but it uses the time you enter in the timesheet to populate the task updates. That's the purpose of the single entry mode.
Okay.
Yes?
The reason the only allow task updates is unchecked in here?
Yeah, because that's when I took the screenshot. It was not checked. That's my own image. I'm sorry, but it's a very good point. Yeah, it's a good leeway to the next few slides because absolutely this is a best practice to check this. But it's a very good observation. Thank you. All right, so these recommended practices to input actuals, and I'm not saying this is the absolute thing you have to do in every situation, okay? We deal with a lot of customers who don't want to use the timesheet because they have already a different timesheet solution and they don't want to have double entries and all kind of things like that. But if the single entry mode works for you, this is the recommended practice to input your actual in the system. So the first recommended practice, and these 5 practices are based on the white paper that I was mentioning that was published in January, that is on TechNet for Project Server, and that talks about the recommended practices to input and report actuals in your system. So the first one is try to use single entry mode. The second one is protect the user updates. So we saw that setting to avoid having the project manager or someone else who has the permissions to override the end user updates. Another one is to use the submitted actual work from timesheet instead of the project plan for time phase reporting. So it has to do with the way the information flows through the system. The first one is to use admin time categories to track non-project work, opposed to using regular project to track non-project time. And the last one is to close the task to updates, to lock them down, basically, instead of using the publish and booking type fields. So there are all kind of things you could do in the system to filter information, to hide it from PWA and so forth. So the best way to basically close tasks is to use the close task to update setting. So we're going to get into a little bit of detail in there. Yes?
You may get to it. Just a quick question on the administrative time. How much ability do you have to classify those? Can you make them anything you want, and those are all non-project categories? Are they set in stone?
No, some of them are default.
Okay.
Some others can be created by you. You can add as many as you want. And you have an additional field that's called the classification that you can use to categorize more the admin time, or what we call admin time, that is non-project time, anything that is not an assignment. So yeah, you can definitely customize that. And you have a lot of actually settings to be able to hide them on the first time the timesheet displays, or to display them all the time. You can have the user, if they are hidden, opening a window actually and displaying what is hidden. What is the list of all the admin or the admin time categories or non-project time that is available to record your time. But the purpose of this is to avoid to have 30 lines of non-project time in your timesheet when you open it, but just to have specific one that are the default one that shows up. And if you need more, then you have a way to select additional from a list and put it in your timesheet. Another option is to also set these admin time as automatically approved or not. So it's a setting also that you can put there to push automatically the approval and to avoid basically approval. Like for example, a vacation, when you log your time, it's already done and it's too late usually. Or sick time, you're not going to reject a sick time if somebody reported the sick time after the fact.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you provide an example of why you would want to enable the protect user updates option?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's go into some details there. So the use single entry mode. So it basically forces you to enter your time, your actuals, in the timesheet view. So a recommended practice is to, if you do that, is to hide the task view. So why do you want to do that? It's to avoid to have errors, for example. If you allow the task view to still be accessible to the users, they may be, untrained. They may not understand what's happening, but they may be also tempted to enter once the timesheet hours and once for the task updates, and the result may not match. So one good practice is to basically have only a single port of entry, that is a single entry mode, and to avoid any mistake that by opening up an additional view that allows the update to the same type of information. So that way, you get the information once, and it flows through the system, and it will not be modified or not conflict if you allow the users to access also the task view that is going to be updated through the process that is enabled by the single entry mode. Okay? So that prevents any override. There is one case when it doesn't work. It's for the material resources. So material resources are not really users of the system. So if you need to enter, to input material resources with a quantity, with a number of hours, for example, like in the timesheet, that won't work. It won't show up. So for the material resources, they have to be logged in through the task view. That's the only way to do it. The timesheet won't do it. So, but how do you prevent users, or most of the users, from entering that? So you will use a security model to prevent people from accessing the task view and allowing only a selected number of users to input the material resources in the system. All right? But otherwise, it's a good recommended practice to hide that task view. And how do you do that? It's just in the quick launch, right? You remember on the left part of the PWA homepage, you have a set of links to navigate. I should have included a picture there, but so you have a dialog in PWA that allows you in the server setting to customize the quick launch, to either add additional links on the left column of the screen, or to also hide existing one so that people are not tempted to click on the link and to access to the view that you want them to prevent. So the best way is to hide it. That way they are not, tempted to click on the link. And that's how you do it in quick launch. All right, the second one is to protect the user updates. So typically, you want to protect these updates because you want the updates that are entered by the resources who are logging their time. So they are putting the time, And typically that time has to match with or is driven to financial systems, for example. That's how people get paid. They have to report their time, either on project or non-project time. And at the end of the month, a financial system is going to add up all that and basically justify the salary and that is given to the employees. So you want to prevent these updates from being overridden by the project manager by protecting these user updates. So everything that is entered on the timesheet with a single entry mode, as long as you check this box to protect the user updates, will be prevented from being overridden by the project manager. They will always be kept as they were entered in the system. Okay? So it's, you can turn that option in the task settings on display. It's an additional configuration. And the values, the scalar values between the timesheet and the project plan are always consistent. So there is a little detail there about scalar values, because it happens that the values that you enter should be consistent, right? If I enter 8 hours on a task on the timesheet, I don't want to see 7.95 hours on my task update. So it happens in some very specific cases, and the white paper explained that very diplomatically, but it doesn't always make a lot of sense to the end user, actually. That in some instances, the scheduling engine is going kind of distribute the hours, even the actuals, in a slightly different way than they were entered by the user. So because the scheduling engine is looking for future planning and that type of things, opposed to the timesheet is really capturing the data as it has been spent and it's in the past. So I know the explanation is it's kind of troubling, specifically when we work with customers in the banking industry or who have tied the system to a financial system. It's kind of difficult to explain why when you enter 8 hours, you don't have 8 hours in the plan, right, on a specific day. Okay. So I think this paper needs to be expanded a little more to talk about, explain this case about why a value would not be exactly the same as the one you entered, right? But we have seen that, and yeah, someone was mentioning the 0.99 and yeah.
What it will do for you, though, from that timesheet, when they enter 32 hours for the week, they're going to get 32 for the week. It's just, it may not be 8, 4, 6, 4, 8. It may distribute it.
Yes.
But still get the 32.
Yes, it will, but sometimes the distribution is a little different than what you were expecting. So if you enter on a week, what Project Server is going to do is going to look at, because it stores the data not by week, but it's going to store it in bucket, the amount of time, basically, by day, typically, but it goes even further in the reporting database where it's by 10 minutes of units. So the way it stores the data doesn't matter. It should keep basically the way the data was entered by the user, and it should flow through the system. But it's true that if it's a week, you enter 32, Project Server is going to take that, and if it's time phased by day, for example, it's going to split, and it's going to spread the actuals. And sometimes, because you have calendars that have different rules and things like that, it may vary a little bit the way it distributes the hour per day. So I'm sure you have seen that type of things happening in your project plans, where the hours entered in the timesheet were not exactly the same the same way it was distributed in the timesheet in the project plan. And there are some scenarios where Project Server, the scheduling engine, is recalculating the way the actuals are spread. But overall, when you add up everything, it's going to match. All right, the third one is to use submitted actual work from timesheet instead of project plans for the time phase reporting. And it has to do with the way it stores information internally. So it's best when you sync with external systems to use the timesheet data that is always, the number of hours or whatever the end user entered in the system, opposed to taking it from the project plan where some variations can happen. In your project plan, when you compare the data between project plan and timesheet, you may not have always 100% of the time a match. So, and all assignments should go through the project manager or resource manager or whatever the role is to approve it. So there are some exceptions where actually you can bypass the system. When you self-assign yourself to an assignment, you reassign the assignment to someone else, there are some situations where actually the approval process is bypassed. So be careful with that, where you want really all the assignments to be approved and reviewed by someone before it's applied to the project plan and before it's approved, right? All right, the next one is to use administrative time categories to track non-project work. So this is the most flexible and easier way to deal with this. If it's not possible because you don't want to use a timesheet, that's another thing. So in this case, you could use regular project, bless you, to track the non-project time, but you have to keep in mind some constraints there. And this is for the sake of performance. You should try to not assign more than 100 resources to the project plan. I'm sure some of you have experience when you assign many resources to a project plan, and also many resources to a task, that you can see an impact on the performance. So this has to do with that, and combined with a very long duration, for example, of the tasks, and you have the recipe for a poor performance on a project when you do that type of things. So the recommendation is to keep to a limited number, of resources. 100 is not the physically maximum number of resources you can have, but it's basically you have to keep in mind the performance of the project when you are going to open it, when you are going to save it, update it, and so forth. So it could be more than that, but you have to keep that reasonable, and the white paper describes these constraints. Another thing is duration of the task. Try to have tasks that are not too long, all right? Like 3-6 months maximum. We have seen some admin projects where tasks were like 10 years, for example, with 300 resources on it. So what's happening when you do that, every resource that is assigned to the task is going to generate a lot of records over a very long period of time that is going to make your reporting database grow a lot, basically, because the data, and in the published database, is stored time-phased. So it's going to basically expand the size of the tables in an unexpected way if you do that type of things. Yes?
JF, one thing you didn't mention, and it wasn't in the white paper, is if you don't care about daily actuals, report by week. Select that box, it's report by, it's a single number.
Yeah, yes. And we have also users who say, and we see that in the engineering department, they don't want to use the daily bucket and even the task bucket. They want a project bucket, and for the week, for example, because they don't want to submit their researchers or engineering guys and to the task of logging their time day by day for each task they do and everything. So that's also an option you can have. If you want to have something that is at a very high level, you can decide to report the time just at the project level and just on a bucket per week, and that's it. And then project server is going to recalculate and distribute all that across the periods, basically the days and so forth. So another thing is, in 2010, you have a new mode that's called the task manual scheduling, right? So I don't know if you have used it. Is anyone have used it? Used yes? So it's a new thing that requires some, I don't know, some explaining to a lot of schedulers because they don't understand, well, what is that? And I want the project to be the scheduling engine to calculate all the time. I don't want me to have to tell the scheduling engine, well, now it's time to calculate, right? To basically recalculate everything and show you the impact of the update. So the reason it was done, actually, it's really to make project more like Excel. So because before, if you remember, you could not enter an invalid value in a specific cell of a format, date format, for example, or numeric format, right? You needed to enter something that was following the rules. So the manual scheduling was really for that. actually. The idea behind was, okay, you have a project that goes by phase, and you can define the first phase in a pretty good way, in detail, at the detail level, but you don't know what's going to happen after that. So you just put a bunch of things, and some of the things you don't have no clue. You put some notes. In the date field, you can say, okay, talk to so-and-so to find out what's going on, or you can put TBD. This is a thing you cannot do in 2007, because you have format for the field, the cells. It expects to have a valid value. If you try to input anything else, it would tell you, well, no, it's not valid. You have to change it. So the manual scheduling was really for that type of thing. So you can use it. By default, it can be either manual or automatically scheduled. That's an option for the project. If you keep it as by default, it's manual. So you will have to switch it back to schedule when you are ready to have the scheduling engine calculating basically the changes made by your updates. And that's pretty much it. Yes?
What do you do if you have more than 100 people in your organization? What do you recommend?
What I would do is I would try 100 is not the maximum limit. It's the one that is in the paper. If you put 200, 300, it's not going to break. It's going to have an impact on the performance. So what I would do is try to have a number that matches, what you have basically, and see how that works. If it's the response time is really, really very slow, I would try to break it down. But basically what it's going to force you is to create either multiple projects or multiple tasks with less people and shorter duration, that type of thing. So yeah, it will generate more work.
Where do you see the performance issues at?
It's hard to say, but yeah, it's true that when you have very long duration.
Is it when you open the project plan? Or
Yeah, it could be when you open, when you save it,
Okay.
when you publish it, yes. Because when you publish, it's going actually to calculate everything in the time phase value, and this is where it's going to update all the tables. And it's going to take more time if you have very long duration and a lot of resources, because each task becomes a lot of workload, basically, to be able to cut all this time period by the unit that is stored in the database, and for each of the resources that is part of the task or the project, yes.
Have there been any reports of performance issues in the time entry piece of SharePoint?
The time entry, no, because we don't, it's just regular project, okay? If you use timesheet, there is no issue, all right? But these rules also apply, by the way, to regular project, where we recommend not to have very long duration for a single task and a lot of resources on each task. Because otherwise, yeah, it's going to generate a lot of rows, it's going to impact the performance.
But what if you have sub-projects, multiple projects linking together? Does it treat it the same way, or does it treat them as separate projects?
I think it's going to treat it the same way. That's the way, basically, each task or assignment is processed. So it's not going to matter, really. What's going to matter is what's happening at the level of each task assignment. If you have 200 assignments for each task and it's very long duration, each task will take some time to be processed. Yeah, that's what it is. Yes?
If you want to use single entry mode and update that task, and you want to use administrative time,
Yes?
what do you do?
Well, you can do both. Because single entry mode allows you to input your timesheet that is pushed into the task update. And the timesheet is the only way to have admin or non-project time. In your project plan, you have nothing for non-project time. If you can use timesheet, it's better to track all the time. Otherwise, if timesheet is not an option, then you have to go back to the plan B, that is the one I was explaining about, using a regular project to store this non-project time and try to limit the number of resources, the duration of the task that you have.
But then even though the timesheet will the resource see the task as well?
Yeah, oh yeah, yes. You will see your assignments, and then you will see the list of all the non-project time that are not assignments that are created to populate the timesheet, yes.
Okay, so you have to then have in two places.
No, it's in the same screen,
No, but I mean, if you have to use task updates,
yes,
and they're used to putting in their hours there.
yes.
Will they have a timesheet that has the same task, so they have two places where they see the same task?
Yeah, in this case, they won't use a single entry mode because it basically defeats the purpose of using single entry mode if you allow them to enter in the task update.
So there's no way to have a timesheet only for administrative purposes?
Yes, absolutely there is.
But then you don't have the lines in there, what do you do?
You have the lines in the timesheet,
They won't be able to...
but you have no point of using, in this case, the single entry mode because the single entry mode is really meant to automate the process of pushing the timesheet input for the assignments into the task updates that are only assignments.
The key, JF, is that she should import them, right? If she's gonna do.
Yeah,
tasks,
no single entry mode, and then you can import.
timesheet.
Yes, so that you
No
don't
double
have,
entry.
yes, yeah. But if you allow to use the timesheet, for example, then I would use a single entry mode because then you have everything in one screen. You have the assignments and you have the non-project time with all these categories that you define, and the users have only one page to input, and they will always like that better than having two screens to deal with, and the import and everything. It's a little bit more complicated than to do. All right. So the last thing is to close the task to update. So we have a new feature also in 2010 that allows you to basically lock down tasks so that you close them so you are sure that no one is going to input any time in them. And because that has happened in the past, right? Where you didn't have a very good way to really block updates to tasks that were still showing up in the timesheet, that were not complete and everything. So now you can actually close a specific task. There is an option to do that, to update, and then that will prevent users from altering or inputting any updates on these tasks that are closed. So use this option that is new instead of using the publish and booking type. So the publish, for each of the tasks, you have a flag that you can turn on or off saying, I want to publish or I don't want to publish, right? To me, it looks like it's a little of a nightmare in the making because you don't really know what has been published and not. It reminds me of the 2003 version where you could do the same thing, right? You could select a subset of tasks, you could publish it, and then it was very difficult to know, okay, what was published and what was not published and when and who is the owner, and it was like a nightmare. So now you have this flag. But this flag is really to prevent the assignments from showing up in PWA. If it's not published, it means it doesn't show up in PWA. That's all what it means. So you can hide things from the, yeah, I'm going there. You can hide things from the user in PWA by switching this flag, publish and not publish, okay? There is another way, the booking type, to basically filter also information about resources, where when you book the resources, you have different type, right? Committed and proposed. And you have a way with views and options and filters to basically hide information that way. So if you decide to hide information or to prevent people from updating tasks, use the close task to update, opposed to using these workaround to basically hide things from the user, from PWA, or from views. All right. Yes?
Our project managers love when you close tasks to update. However, is there any way in the project schedule to see that you close that task to update?
Yeah, the question is, your project managers do not want to use the closed task, right?
No, they love using it.
Ah, they love, okay.
So they use it in PWA, they go in and close
Yeah.
the task update.
Yeah.
They open their schedule, they can't see that they've done that.
There's no flag field that says.
Oh.
Update.
Oh.
So there is not.
That's a good point, yeah. Yeah.
But I guess I'm asking, does anybody know of anything?
I don't know. So I have experts in the room there as well. So if someone has an answer for that, feel free to share.
The only thing I would say is that if the project manager is the one that is flagging it for closed updates, grab a project flags field and flag it yourself.
Yeah.
It's part of the process.
Yeah. So, but it's kind of double work on to do that. But yeah.
Nothing automated. I don't know what you
Yeah. That could be a good suggestion for the product. Yeah.
That either.
Yeah. The only way I see is through reporting, through reading the database and querying that stuff and taking it out. But yeah, so it's a good thing, yeah. The good question there, and I don't have an answer for that. Yeah. Inactive is you can always activate it later. Closing is, well, that's it. It won't be, I mean. Yes, yes.
The task, would you only do that if the task is actually complete? Is that how you're managing your tasks?
You would not, yeah, if it's complete.
I mean, if it's complete and the time that was planned for it has been achieved and the task is complete, you could still enter time for it if it doesn't you don't close it out.
If
correct?
it still show up on your timesheet,
Right.
yeah, yep.
Well, but if you're not allocated for it, right, then it won't show up. But what
Right.
you're saying is by closing it out, it'll prevent further time.
Yes, it will provide. Yeah, it will prevent any updates to that task. Yes. Yeah, but inactivating does other things.
Schedule impact.
Yes. So, yeah, inactivating does additional things that besides just closing the task, because it impacts the schedule and the assignments and everything.
Not the predecessor-successor relationships, it just won't let you update it any further. If you just close it
Yeah.
without updating.
All right. So there are a lot of different cases that are documented in this white paper. They are not frequently seen. I have to tell you, I read all the different cases when if you use the publish or the booking type opposed to the closing task to update, you may, in some situation, lose some data, actually. So you have to be careful when you do that type of things. Closing the task as well, and I ask you to refer to the white paper that explains all these different situations and when you have to be careful. Closing the task at the beginning of a new timesheet period, it's a good thing to wait that the previous period ends before you basically close the task, to wait for the beginning of a new timesheet period before you do that type of things, to avoid any confusion of the users and any problem that could happen as well. All right, so now let's talk about, let's look under the hood. So I know everybody's scared of looking under the hood, right? Because of Microsoft is telling you, or we are telling you, ever look at the other databases, right? Except the one that is documented, the reporting. You are not even allowed to query these databases. So this is how that looks, right? Under the hood. So you put your updates in the timesheet, everything is great, simple, and then something happens, and eventually the update comes out on the other end, that is the reporting database. It happens that in some instances, well, the updates don't show up. So they are stuck somewhere, if I can use that terminology. So just a refresher about what's happening when you submit your timesheet. So let's say the single entry mode, or even if you don't use the single entry mode, because that applies also. So everything that is displayed, updated in PWA, lives in the published database, right? Everything that is just saved from the Project Pro, for example, lives in the draft database. And everything that is published also pushes data after it has been updated in the published database into the reporting database. So almost everything. I know where you want to go there. Okay. Almost everything. And this is why it's a good recommendation not to go look into the other databases in most instances, but sometimes the data is not there in the reporting database. So what do you do? So there is a solution of, yeah, sure, we can use PSI and we can use web services to read the data, but it's a big undertaking. So in some instances, yeah, you may query the published database and draft database. Ooh. So what's happening there? So I start to get into the table description and the database schema and everything. But basically, when you input your timesheet, or actually the task updates, when it is pushed, so the timesheet actually ends out in the reporting database. So this one is okay, you are in compliance with what we are telling you, okay? For the task update though, it's tougher because you don't have a lot of information that is in a reporting database. Actually, you have none. You don't know where the task updates is in the process. You don't know what happened to it. You don't know if it has been approved or things like that. You can only deduct these type of things from what comes out at the other end, that is the reporting database. If it's not there, then what happened to it? Okay, so the task updates, either they come from the timesheet or you input them in the task view, are stored into a table that's called MSP assignment transactions. And this is in the published database, okay? Because this is coming from the PWA. So you can see, I mean, the names are not very, I guess, user-friendly, I would say, but it's readable. So you have a bunch of, you have GUIDs, of course, to identify as a unique key in the database. These are these UID, right? These long string of characters that we call GUID, that are unique identifier. And then you have a set of columns that basically is going to store all the information that you want to know. So what's the state of this task update? What is the type of the task update? Is it a regular assignment, or is it a delegation, or is it a creation of a task? All this great information you would like to know. What happened to that stuff? You know? And what type do I have, and what's the status? What's the action? What is the action? It's basically in progress, it's approved, or it's rejected. This is the state. It's in there in the database. So it's in the published database. Is there any error that happens when it was processed by the system, not by the end user, by the system? And there is, at the beginning, as you can see, the first few columns that ends with enum have actually a value in there that means something. So I will show you a SQL query after that that decodes these values and translates them into English. And then you have a bunch of really great information there. You have the submitter resource ID that tells me who submitted this task update. So who is the person who accessed the task view and send a save and a submit to input the data into the system. You have also the approver. What is the resource ID of the approver? You have also some dates, like when was it submitted, when was it delegated, and when was it updated, like a save. You have the create date, the modification date, and then you have a bunch of GUID after that points back to other tables that contain the assignment, unique ID, that contain the task unit ID, that contain the project unit ID, and the task published unique ID, and the job and additional things. So here I have a bunch of information that is great because it's exactly what I want to know to find out what happened to my task update if it didn't output into the reporting database. So for the one who are not really fluent in T-SQL, that is the language that allows you to query the SQL databases. So I put there in the slide actually a real query we have been using at customer that decodes of these values. So the first paragraph, I would say, the case, is going to look at all the values of the column that's called the transaction type. So if it's a 0, that means it's a task assignment update. So it's mostly the case when all these are regular assignment updates, so task updates that would be inputted into the task view as an update to an assignment. So you will see a lot of these. And then you will have other type of values that are in there. So another one is a declined task assignment. Another one is a create task request. You remember that you can allow a user to create their own task, right? It's an option. So that will be like that. If you have a delegation of a task assignment, it will show up at number 3. And a request, a create task assignment request, team delegation. Some of these values are very cryptic, and I'm not sure exactly when it's used because I've not seen some of these ever. But they are there in the table. Then you have the status manager action over here. So you have three values there, 0, 1, and 2 for the transaction action. And it can be pending. So that means it has been submitted by the approver has not done anything with it. So it's pending in the system, and it's basically stuck there until someone, the approver or the task update, does something. It could be approved. So the approver we know has approved it, and it should have flowed into the project, right? As long as the approver or the project manager open the project and accept and receives all the updates, right? If the project manager is in vacation, it's not going to happen if there is no delegation. The last action code is basically rejected. So that gives me all the actions that have been taken or are pending on these transactions, these task updates. And finally, do I have an error that was generated by the system after the task update was acted on by the project manager, for example. So the system also tracks all these events. So you have all kind of values. Most of them will be 0. That means it's applied, everything flowed, and it's fine. Sometimes you will have undefined, conflict, project deleted. So all kind of scary stuff there. Invalid update or delegation. Internal error. So this one is frightening. And count. I'm not sure what count means exactly, but I've never seen it. But it's part of the valid values. So where did I get all these values, by the way? So actually in SDK, there is a description of some of the fields that exist for the programmer or the developers to be able to write code that's using PSI. And some of these values, the columns, are documented in there because these developers will have to use these to do something in the program. So they are not secret or whatever. They are just hidden very deeply into the MSDN SDK. And then you have a bunch of other things in the query there that are basically the approval date, the update status, update type, and so forth. The next one is the end of the query, where we select that from all these tables. So we do a huge join because everything that was referenced with a unique ID has a label, or has a name, or has a description, and so forth. So we need to go grab all these values from all over the place to have a meaningful report. Otherwise, you will have a bunch of GUID in your query result, and it will be pretty hard to read. So once you have done all that, what shows up is a nice output like this. And it's going to tell you the project name. It's going to tell you the task name. It's going to tell you the approver name, the submitter, that is the resource or the user who submitted their task update. It's going to tell you the status manager, and it's going to tell you the status itself. So I translated basically based on several conditions what was the query doing. So I split the query into multiple PCs to avoid to have everything that was in this transaction table showing up, because I was concentrating on very specific things. So in this case, this query output shows me all the updates that were updated in the draft but not published. What does that mean? It means the project manager approved the updates in the project plan. The project manager saved the project plan but has not republished the project plan, meaning the data is not flowing into the published database. So, and then it gives me all kind of things like the days between approval and publish. So this output is actually a different query. I will publish also, but I had different set of queries that were split between different purposes. But what we found out in most cases is that the users, whatever their role is, are not following the process, all right, because they don't understand how that works. So they think that because they input things into the timesheet or the task update and they close the page, the information flows. So it's not what's happening. And I can tell you in 99% of the cases, with all the customers I've worked with, users at different levels complain about the timesheet, the task update. I inputted my data in there. It never came out, right? I did what I was supposed to do. And these type of queries are actually showing you the proof, the audit of what really happened. And I can tell you in 99% of the case, it's a problem of using the tool and knowing what you need to do at what stage, okay? So some users, team members are going to say, but I inputted all my things into the timesheet, and I press save, and that's it. All right, well, but you didn't submit it. So it was never sent to the approver, and it never started, actually, the workflow to be able to push the data through the various roles. Okay? Another thing is, I submitted my updates, but the project manager or the status manager never approved them. So they are still stuck there in some table in a transition state, waiting for the approver to basically follow the process and do what they are supposed to do. After it's approved, as you have seen, someone has to open the project plan, right, to receive the updates, and then save the project plan and then republish it. If it's not republished, it will never end out in the published database and never be pushed to the reporting database. So I can tell you in most of the cases we have seen, this is related to this. All right? There is nothing nefarious happening in the database there or in the scheduling engine that is going to gobble your updates and then throw them somewhere in some black hole of the system, all right? And they will never reappear. They are actually always there in the database. In the few instances where actually the system made a mistake or the system failed to push the updates, this is related to bugs. All right? Bugs that have been corrected or bugs that may have to be corrected, but it's not normal that something is pushed through and then it fails because the system fails to process it. So I'm sure all of you have seen some projects that look perfectly fine, right? You try to save them or to publish them and it fails, right, in the queue. And you scratch your eyes like, well, it was working before or I didn't do anything wrong. And the project now that cannot publish. So the same thing is going to happen to the task update. There will be a reason that triggers that failure to process and that keeps these updates in there. All right? So now, how do you do and what do you do once you have identified all that? So the easiest way, if it's just, I would say, a user error or a user misunderstanding, it's easy to fix because you just need to know what are the users who are not doing what they were supposed to do, contact them and tell them, well, you have all these tasks that are waiting in this project, do this, and you will free up the updates, yes? It's the query I showed you before. It doesn't come with the product. So it's a custom query that we wrote to basically help troubleshoot this problem. So I will publish these queries on a blog.
You need SQL Server Management Studio.
Yes, you need to have basically a SQL developer who understands this, or at least you need to have the query that works to be able to execute it and comes out with that, yes. So you need to run the query, yes?
A lot of my users report that they enter their time, they hit save, it's there, they come back the next day, it's not there. Is this
Okay.
what you're talking about? Is that
No, this one is disconcerting, yes. So they say they save it, and it's not there the next day?
I haven't been able to verify everything.
Yeah.
User error, you know. Whatever.
Yes.
I just wondered.
And I have to tell you, this type of queries will troubleshoot that, will identify exactly what happens, because nothing disappears with that. I found out that all transactions are stored there. There is exactly the status, what was done, when, by whom. So these are very valuable in troubleshooting this type of situation. And I've not heard that one much about, I put my stuff, I save them, and they are gone. Usually, that doesn't happen. But, you know, if I was hearing that, I was probably invoke Premiere after doing the checkup that I was mentioning. Yes? Yeah, go ahead. You.
The other situation, and I bet they're combined, is I sometimes go into it and there's an error, a red error bar.
Yeah.
And I think there's something going on with the finish date or an update.
It could be, yes.
And so the two may be
Yes.
related, but so this may no problem.
So these one are a little cryptic to troubleshoot because you need to understand what the system does, why it's doing it. There are some very convoluted situations where, yeah, the project or the task is not being processed right, or yes. So what I can tell you is I will publish these queries in a blog, okay? I will explain how to use them, what they do, and you know, feel free to use them. So they don't update the database, they just read it. So there is no danger of damaging anything. Yes, someone else had a question? No? Okay. All right, quickly. The next thing is under the hood, but this one is not really under the hood, but, well, time compliance. So this one we are lucky because it's in a reporting database, actually. So all the information is stored in the MSP _ timesheet actual, and you have a set of views also that are in the reporting database that you can use. They are suffixed with user view. Typically, you have two types of view, or multiple types. But one is user view, the other one is OLAP view. So the OLAP view is the one that's used to populate the OLAP cubes. Don't use this one, they are very specific for the OLAP environment, to generate the cubes and populate them. The user views are typically the one to use because they contain all these huge joins to grab all the data from all over the place. Don't use them on a regular basis. Use them as a starting point to basically have a query that works and then just trim out all the columns because they basically get everything from every table in the join. So you have a huge amount of work being done by SQL Server when you use these user views if you try to select a lot of rows, okay? So it will definitely impact the performance of the system. So very quickly, timesheet actual contain all this data, and you have some sample queries, templates that come with the product that allows you to get this type of data connector to allow you to make some reports. So the type of things you can do is, for example, this one. So you can use basically timesheet actual as relational tables, or you can use also the cubes that are called, the cubes called OLAP assignment time phase, OLAP EPM timesheet, project timesheet, OLAP timesheet. So all these are documented in the SDK, Project 2010 SDK. It documents the reporting database completely with every column, every table, and it documents also what each cube is made of, okay? Dimension and measures. So you can use the reporting tools to either, like Excel or Excel services, to either query relational database through views or query the cubes to do that type of report. For example, here, I used the template report that got me all the fields that I needed, and then I just drag things quickly. But basically, I want to show the name of the resources, the plan work, the billable actual work, and the actual overtime work. And then I picked up a set of filters here in Excel for example, that week ending date. And the timesheet status, I wanted to show everything that is approved. On another query, just by changing the value of the filter, I just wanted to show what's in progress. In progress means it was submitted by the user, but it has not been processed or approved or rejected by the approver. So in this case, I will see, this user. So here I have just a username, but from the query you can grab the project name, the task name, and everything, and that will give you all the information for the date. All right? So these ones are available, they are documented, they are part of the product, and you can use that, but you have to build your own, you have to drag the right field, basically, to be able to show this type of things. So what you can do is custom queries. So I showed you one before. So very quickly, we are going to finish. And you can do some custom reports. So you can do some fancy things like that by using Excel, right? With the background, the conditional formatting to have like some bars and some colors that highlight basically what is wrong with some of the data. So you can do a lot of things like that. Or you can do things like that with like icons and smiley faces and traffic lights and things like that to really like in a snapshot to have a view of everything. I've seen also customer, I didn't put an example there, but having one column per week for each of the resources that show with a graphical indicator what's the status of the timesheet or the task update. It's green, it was reported, approved, blah, blah, blah. It's not, it's red, or it's in process, it's yellow. So by week, and for like many weeks, in one snapshot, like you can see a snapshot of everything that's going on in your system with that type of thing. It's all based on queries and formatted reports, basically, that's using Excel. All right, so that's a summary. I finished. Thank you for for staying until the end. So if you have any questions, feel free. We are the last one, so we can stay as long as we want. Yes?
If we interface our hours to our accounting program, is there any way to like overall final submit everybody's timesheets to a certain period?
Automatically, you mean?
Yes.
No, because it's user by user. So out of the box, no. I imagine it's something that could be done through code by basically impersonating each user, but it's not something you can do in bulk.
That's what we do now.
Yeah. There is nothing, because the way the information is stored. Another thing that has been requested is to be able to update in bulk custom fields across many projects, right? And that's another thing that is hard, because the way the information is structured and stored, where you actually need to open up each project, check it out, before you can modify it, and then check it in. Yes. So it's the same for the timesheet, unfortunately. Yes? You will have to look at probably, that's a good question. I don't know where it's going to come out. It will be either the regular blog, the project, or the project deployment, Brian Smith blog, or the TechNet, I would imagine. So I will be sure that Christoph Fissinger, he has a blog also, or the project team puts an article and points to where it's going to be published. Yeah.
And the PowerPoints will be up on the
Yeah, the PowerPoint is going to be uploaded, and you will be able to download it. The site stays up for several months, by the way, after the project conference. So as long as you can log in, you will be able to access to all the PowerPoint, but they are definitely going to post for all the presentation, every PowerPoint. Yes?
I understood the compliance on the timesheet, your compliance report. Do you have any experience doing compliance on task updates? I want to know if somebody hasn't submitted a task update on what that should do.
Yeah, we have something that's called that was done for 2007, that's called the report pack. That has an example for both task update, a report for both task update and time compliance that you can download, and with few modifications. We have not updated it yet for 2010 because we need to revisit a lot of the reports. But it should work for most of the reports. Specifically, the task update and the time compliance has not changed a lot, so it should be okay. So it's using SSRS, SQL Reporting Services, and it's something you can download. You have also, you have probably like 40 reports there that are for the governance, some interesting queries that show up, when a custom field was modified, when a user permission or user was modified. It's something that the system doesn't tell you, right? This audit trail. So you have all kind of little utilities like that are SQL queries that you can use right away because they don't update anything. They just read the data, and it's going to give you a lot of pretty good updates like that.
Microsoft's reporting pack or your reporting pack?
No, Microsoft Project 2007 Report Pack 2 in Latin, a Roman numeral. If you do a search on that, you will be able to download it. This is a bunch of RDLs, like the SQL Reporting Services report files that you can download. You have a big document that explains how to install it, and that documents each report to explain what fields you have in there. You have all the queries that are in there as well. And what you have seen there is actually part of the report pack, in part at least. Yeah. Yes?
For looking at timesheet status across a period, I think it appears that if someone has not created their timesheet, there's nothing there to get
Yes.
the status. You have to look by the absence of,
Yeah.
sort of.
Yes, you will have to do another join to be able to show that. So you have, but you can do that, yes. But it's true. This table will only show what has been created for the timesheet if you do the timesheet compliance. Otherwise, it won't show up if it's not created. Yeah.
Before we all leave,
Oh, hey, thank you. You have very good questions.